2003 when he began his career mapping archaeological sites and survey areas. In 2009, he transitioned.
Security threat, apparently.
Yes, sorry. In 2009, he transitioned to the energy sector and has been employed in geospatial positions at Dominion Delivery, Exco Resources, and Mountaineer Keystone, prior to joining Cabot Oil and Gas, where he currently serves as GIS supervisor. Mike holds bachelor degrees in geography and anthropology from Penn State, which he has complemented with post-baccalaureate work in GIS, data administration, web development, and computer science. Mike is a founding member of the Appalachian Petroleum User Group, APUG, member of the Association of Petroleum Surveying and Geomatics, APSG, and has served on the GIS EnerGIS Conference Committee since 2014. So welcome back.
All right, so I'm all that stands between you all and the social hour. So I won't keep it too brief, but I'll try to keep it a little bit brief for you. I want to share with you a story about Cabot's GIS team, probably familiar to a lot of you, probably an experience that a lot of you have had. We've heard a lot throughout the day, and we'll probably hear more tomorrow about the downturn. You know, and no one's really done a whole speech on it, but it's kind of a thread that's been woven throughout everyone's talks. And during that time, we've all been asked to do more with less. And the question that I had for my management was, what if I was already doing more with less? You know, if your company is like Cabot, then you run lean, and you're proud to run lean. But you can run lean as a company and still have that not be true for equally across the whole company for every department. And so one of the issues that I had been experiencing was that I didn't feel that my team was staffed sufficiently for what had been requested of us. So to build off of something that Sarah said, you know, all this work was coming into us. We'll see a little bit later on in one of these, the concept of enterprise GIS is relatively new to Cabot. And so once we started to implement it, more and more requests from different functions of the department or different functions of the company came into us. And so we quickly hit a point where we weren't able to keep up. And so it wasn't a question of, you know, any longer of, can we technically do it? It was more, do we have time to do it? And if we don't have time to do it, how do we prioritize our time whenever we're working for basically the whole organization and everybody's stuff is equally as important to them? Since I'm walking away from this, can you guys hear me all right? All right, cool. Okay. So as a result, you know, okay. Oh, the video, okay. I'll just stay here. Oh, the bottom. Perfect. Okay. All right. So, as I said, we were able to get everything, all of our day-to-day data updates whenever people sent us things, whenever we had updated, you know, drill schedules. We were able to continue to get all that updated. But as we met with users, it became clear that the types of things they were requesting would require a significant input time to figure out how to do or implement new applications, building out new functionality, and that was what that type of value-added work is what we were having a difficult time finding a way to get around to. One of the ways that we tried to make sure that management knew what we were doing, because it became clear to us that we weren't getting everything done that was requested of us, was we wanted them to make sure that they had available to them what task we were doing at any given time. So we created qualitative reports through Microsoft Word, Excel, etc. Let them know every week, week in, week out, these are the types of things we're doing, this is what we're doing, this is who we're doing it for, you know, and if occasionally they would have questions, they could get a hold of me and they could say, okay, can you tell me a little bit about this? This caught my interest. I didn't know you did anything for the facilities department, you know, that's a new thing, so let's have a conversation about it. So as I said already, Enterprise GIS is relatively new to Cabot. I was the first hire in January of 2014, and although we're now under land, the land department, it's important to understand didn't even know we're in the land department. We were originally in the information services department. So that kind of explains how we function the way we function, which we work for the whole company. So if someone in facilities, someone in regulatory, someone in drilling, someone in completions, you know, all the requests are weighted relatively equally by us, and we have to try to figure out how that fits into the greater picture of the company. The formation of GIS was supported by senior management, and it was pushed for, and there were internal champions among all levels of employees and management to push for the concept because they saw the value in it. So even during the downturn, they continued to invest in GIS technology and GIS personnel. So we were able to get staff to a certain level, and the level that they thought was applicable for the task that they felt had been requested of us. And so one of the challenges became convincing them that the original task was no longer the task that we were really trying to function at, right? So the task originally was, let's all get on the same operating picture, because everybody has a slightly different idea of what our expirations are, what our drill schedule is, etc. And so once we were able to get everyone kind of condensed down to the same idea, it now became, value added. We want to see the completion schedule for the next 2 years on the same, lined up with the drill schedule, so we can make sure that our truck traffic isn't going to interfere with itself on the roads, and we can, if we're going to repair a road in 2018, we don't want to then be pounding that same road heavily, in the first half of 2019 and have to repair it again. So the questions that started to be asked of us that went beyond the scope of what we were originally tasked with doing. They were all really cool things that we really wanted to do, and we just had to make sure that we could convey that. So I had to look for a solution, because the qualitative reporting that I suggested, it was great. Management appreciated it. They liked to know what we were doing, but it was qualitative. Even once we eventually migrated to Excel, keeping track of individual tasks, it was still qualitative by nature. And so, let's see here. Okay, so given that we were in information services, we had been kicking around the idea of a task or request management tracking system for a while. I think it's either on this slide or the next slide. Okay, it's on this slide. Our IS group implemented one in August of 2015, and so we kind of had front row seats to them rolling it out. How many of you have had the experience where you're working on a project and you find out that that same person who requested it of you has requested it of someone else, right? Exactly, all of us. This also helps things like that. So it helped us keep track of our time, but it also allowed us to see requests in a different way. So there were a couple different value added things to it. So whenever we started looking and tossing around the concept, the first thing we did was Paul and I threw together a web page, and we started to build out our own request system. And we quickly realized that if we didn't have the time to do any value added things, we certainly didn't have the time to build a custom solution. So we just approached the director of IS and requested to be added to ServiceNow, their ticketing system. By the time we got added, we were already moved out of that department, but our departmental manager saw the value in having us, and she lobbied for it as well. So we were able to get added. So again, just some quick points about how, since we already had one internally, how it was able to quickly benefit us. We didn't have to worry about setting up a new cloud storage. We didn't have to worry about setting up a new server. We didn't have to worry about pushing out a new application to anyone, because it was already in use somewhere else within the organization, which was certainly a benefit to us. I mean, maybe the hidden or overlooked benefit to that is also that our customers were the same customers that were requesting it when they were having an issue with their email or having an issue with someone else, so they didn't have to learn a new tracking system either. So it was pretty simple. They just added us as a separate category. You can see, if you look over at the category, you can see they put us in as GIS software. I wasn't gonna I wasn't going to fight that one, even though this should have probably just been GIS services. I figured you pick your battles. That wasn't one worth fighting. But we got to provide the subcategories. So that was where all the qualitative reporting kind of did us some good. We were able to go back through there. We had already done a little bit of data mining out of that. So we were able to use that and create some categories. You can see those subcategories I have. They're certainly not exhaustive. You could probably, some of you may disagree with them, some of you may wonder why I didn't include something or why I lumped some things in there. The idea was just, keep them something that our customers would recognize, and it would still be able to allow us to later on, whenever we run reports, which I'll show you just a couple of the first reports we ran, would allow us to quickly see what type of tasks were being asked of us. Okay, where are we here? Okay, so as you can see the date, we actually implemented a little sooner than that. This has been relatively recently for us. We're still in early days of the ticketing system, and I'll have some thoughts on that a little later here. But so the first thing we did was we just basically we're used to sending out GIS team bulletins whenever we have to bring down servers for maintenance, or whenever we have to implement schema changes that require us to do something outside of a change window. So if we actually have to do it during business hours, or even a lot of times if we're doing something in the evening, we'll send something like this out just so they're aware in case anyone's working after hours. So the first thing we did is we sent out a bulletin to the whole company so they're aware of what was happening. Then we knew we still weren't going to have people immediately creating tickets, even though they were used to creating them for IS requests. IS still a lot of times has to create them for the user. So we're still in the process of kind of getting people used to making those requests. It's getting better. A lot of people now, what we started to do is we started to just copy the body of emails into the ticket, create the ticket in the person's name, so it would be submitted to us, and then it will also copy them on it. And I'll talk a little bit about some of that in a minute here. But so to get people used to seeing the request system, we were just setting up tickets for them, and then explaining to them how we did it. And then the last thing is that we had to learn how to navigate it ourselves. We had to learn how to use it, had to learn how, what it could do, what it's all capable of, how to get multiple people copied on tickets, how to use it to communicate back and forth. Nothing real difficult, but it took a little while to kind of get those basics ironed out. Okay, so after I think about a month and a half or so, so pretty quickly, of having the ticketing system, I already had a lot of data. It didn't take very long for us as a team all using it to be able to compile some data. And so I spoke to my manager about it, and we were able to get a meeting with our senior management to discuss some of our quick findings. Because again, something I think I alluded to but didn't really say was our management, our direct management, knew that we were under a personnel crunch, or at least a time crunch for our personal work time, that was keeping us from getting some of the things done that some people were looking for and would have been a benefit. So it wasn't a surprise whenever we were quickly able to show that. I put together a couple pages of my thoughts, bullet points. But one of the things I wanted to do, I'm going to show you. The next slide will be the first two graphs that I showed. But I also put together a table of 10%. Just randomly selected of all the tickets that we had yet closed, because I anticipated, our senior management they ask really good questions, and I'm sure a lot of you are the same. Like they read everything you put out, they ask really insightful, good, pointed questions, and so you really need to make sure you know what you're going to ask. And so I anticipated one of the questions is going to be, well, you did, I can't remember what the number was, but 230 tickets in the last month and a half. What were those tickets? Was it every single map you made one ticket? Was it every piece of data you updated one ticket? What types of things are you talking about? So I just picked 10% randomly out so I could show them what they were. I got a couple examples up here that are in front of me. One of them was create a PAA map. A PAA map, that's something we send out to our landowners, and it depends upon the area in which we're looking at. They can be 130 maps. out of there, including all the data that we have to update, they can be 70. You know, so that's a half a day of someone on the team's efforts. It can also be another one of the ones that popped up was update land data from the brokers. So, you know, that's a Python script that runs and, you know, takes maybe half an hour, if that, you know, and including extracting the data and notifying everyone that it's up to date. Another one that popped up was one of our users, one of the GIS team users was unable to run some Python scripts that we had created. And so we had to troubleshoot what in the script was prohibiting them from actually being able to complete the task. As you can imagine, that's also something that takes some time. You know, someone has to research it, someone has to look back at the script, figure out what's going on. And so it ended up, as you can imagine, being a pretty good cross-section by just grabbing 10% of those tickets. It ended up being a pretty good cross-section of the types of tasks that we were facing. And so for each ticket, you know, you can see the stuff that I had there. Caller would be the person who it originated from. So if it was a landman, it'd be the landman's name, etc. And then state would be, is it still active? Is it closed? Is it a new ticket? It had just been created and none of us have looked at yet, etc. So I'm not sure if you can all read my little figures that I put together on these. So this was, as of our meeting, which was at the end of March, this was all tickets that had been created in the system, period, from whenever they first started running it. And you can quickly see already, aside from the other category, GIS was already, pretty quickly, we were already jumping up there with the rest of the IS department. So that'd be, you know, hardware, software, phones, basically everything. You know, so, and then the second one here was incidents by group. And so you can see this one's similar to the last one, except this one updates the time. So we were actually added to the ticketing system on February 20th. So unlike the last one where we ran it from the beginning of time, we just added, this one ran it from then up until for about the month and a half up to when I presented it. And then, and that was just kind of the different colors within each bar or the different users. So, and that's across. So you can see like, this was someone in IS who had done a couple things for us and helped us. But again, the point was I was trying to quantitatively show senior management that we were truly experiencing the workload that I had thought we were, and I'd been suggesting that we were, and that we needed additional resources, not technology resources, but we needed additional man hours, people hours to be able to accomplish some of the tasks that we wanted to get to. And so they weren't surprised when they saw it, but you know, they can't just make decisions based on my gut feeling. All right, so what, I'll go to this in a second. So what happened based on that meeting? So based on that meeting, we were able to get 2 full-time, well, I shouldn't say full-time, but 2 contractors for basically 40 hours a week who you know, we didn't have access to before. So, you know, management's idea was we'll get people in on a contract basis first, so you can again show that there's not just projects that are bottlenecked, and the minute you finish those projects, all this work's going to go away. Again, my hunch is that once, and I'm sure many of you have seen this experience too, once the projects we're working on now go away, there's already projects in line, there's already things, as Philip is probably sitting there thinking, there's things that people want that we're not able to do. So once the projects we're working on now are done, there's going to be more projects and more projects. And so I'm pretty sure we're going to be able to demonstrate that. But you know, that's something that we do have to demonstrate. So we were able to show using ServiceNow, using the ticketing system, we were able to quantitatively, quickly show what we had suspected and what we had known. Some of the added benefits of it, before I talk about, you know, what we will be able to do, some of the added benefits are, it helps. Well, actually, before I say it, do any of you have a ticketing system that you use for your GIS work? Okay, a couple of you. So one of the things that's great about it is, I'm sure many of you have seen in the past where someone will come to you and they'll ask you for something, and maybe while you're working on it, you'll be like, I don't really know what they want. And maybe sometimes you'll know they don't know what they wanted. They had an idea of what they wanted, and you have to kind of fill in the gaps there. Or maybe they just didn't communicate too effectively, and now they're out in the field, and you're not going to be able to get it, right? The ticketing system helps do that. It helps you get everything, because when you create a ticket, you get everything in the ticket, it sends it to them, and so they get a copy of whatever you put in the ticket too. And then they can add their comments, and it'll put it back into the ticketing system, and it will send it back to you. So it's like an email, I guess. It's like an email chain, but it's in the database for anyone on your team to see, and anyone to be able to add their thoughts. And you can have multiple people in it, so it can be in that same function. But instead of just being in your email chain and get buried in a folder, it's if you go back to those subcategories, you can quickly see all those things and trace and query on all those things in the same way. And you can create, if we go back up, which I'll do real quick because I have a minute or so here. I think I have I don't know if you can see over here. I think that the resolution's not great, but you can track and you can create saved queries. So if you're curious about what specific users had done or departments had done or types of tasks, you can create queries, you can save them, and underneath that little star there, you'll see at the top of that column, you can hit that, and when you save them, it'll populate with all those. So you can quickly run them just like you did, expect of any database driven product. You can quickly run them, and you can quickly see what you've closed for users, how long they've stayed open. Now, if I go back, that's actually one of the next steps. When I say how long they stayed open, I mean physically how long the ticket stayed open. So if someone puts something in with low priority and we don't look at it for a week, then it's going to say at least a week. It'll be at least a week until we closed it. There are other things that the ticketing system can do that we just haven't implemented yet. One of them is there's a way we can activate. It's not really a clock, although it can function as a clock. So we can put time in there, and we can add a time element. So whenever we're done with the project, we could put it took us 5 hours. So we can keep track of that, so we have some expectation for what projects took. So that's one of the things we're looking at doing. You can have it email recurring tasks to both you and a user. So one of the 10% examples I brought was the update land data for the brokers. That's a weekly thing. So we can create that, and we can schedule it to email out weekly, so we know that task is coming and it will arrive at a certain time. And then one of the things that we've started to do already, I want the team to get better at it. It'll be beneficial is to use that as not necessarily a conversation, but use it as almost like a baton to pass off whenever I've done my part. So if we have a leasehold update and each of us has a different piece of that update, Ben does his part, then he transfers the ticket. So the assigned to portion of the ticket, he transfers that to Hunter. Hunter completes his part, he transfers it to me. I run the final step through SQL Server, and then it gets pushed out and it's live in the SDE, right? So we can also, the ticketing system will then also trace that kind of chain of custody from person to person. So it'll allow us to look back and see it, which ties into one of my last 2 thoughts here. At some point, once we have a little more data, I'm going to go back and I'm just going to look through a cross section of everything that's been closed, because one of the things I know, I'm only ever looking at the horizon for our GIS team, all the things that we need to do. I don't ever really look back to see what we've done. So now we'll have one place where we can quickly see everything that's been closed, the types of tasks that we've done, which will spur our memories, and we can start to ask some questions about those things. So patterns: who, what, and why, right? Who requested something? What did they request? And then once we see that, and we can see a pattern, why did they request it? Because that's the value-added part. Because maybe that spurs us to think about a project that we can help them with. What's really going on? We think we know what's going on in the organization, and maybe we do. But once we have the actual data in front of us, and we can see what's being requested, what types of things are being requested, that might give us some different ideas, or let us see things in a different light. The one that I'm really excited about, actually, is what areas of the organization are we not reaching? I know we're going to see that. I know I can already think of, and I'm sure any of you, if you're thinking about how this would work in your organization, you can think of the same people you're going to see, the same handful of landmen, the same handful of facilities, and regulatory folks, but there's people out there that have data, and have data that are locked in their own access database or their own data module here or there, that it would be awesome to be able to get into that data. And so that's not only going to show you, the patterns of who, what, and why, what you're doing, but also who aren't you reaching. What areas of the organization hasn't your GIS penetrated? You can get in, get some data, and bring it to the rest of the company. And then, another theme we've heard throughout the day is it can be difficult for GIS to show the cost savings, right? Everyone in this room, we all know that GIS saves the company money. It promotes efficiency. But most of us struggle on putting their finger on it and being able to show management, what we've done. And I figure, I don't know how yet, but I'm sure we're going to be able to dig some KPIs, some key performance indicators out of that data once we go back through it. And then we'll be able to establish some goalposts to mark ourselves by. And then the last thing of looking backwards, kind of taking a selfie of the GIS as exists in a snapshot in time, because we can pull out the tickets for any given week, we can put that in, is our success stories. Because when we're always focused on the horizon, always focused on the next task, always focused on what's in front of us, the unfinished things, the things that are looming, the obstacles, it's, we sometimes lose track of the awesome things that we've accomplished. And so, you don't want to dwell on those either, but it's important to remember those, so you get some success stories and can keep your level of excitement up. There's a couple of the things I used that just gave me some of the ideas. You can see most of that's at Arc User Magazine. There's actually some pretty cool stuff in there. And that's it. That one? Okay.
We have some time for questions.
Yes.
So are you using that to track tasks, or are you also using it for project tracking?
So I'm under no illusions that we'll probably start to either lump or split things out as we go on and as we get that information. So the first month and a half comparison to what we would run now isn't necessarily going to be apples to apples. But so as we get more familiar with it, as we become more inclined to do it, so it's a mixture of both. So right now we're tracking projects in there as a single task, and that's where I think one of the things that I had kind of on my what I'd like to do with the time tracking. That's where something like I think Linda has implementation of collector in there as a single task, right, Linda? So once we that's something that's going to get split out. Once we have a more clear idea of the discrete tasks required. What we don't want to do is, so if we go back to that acreage update example, right? We'll get data from the land mappers, the people mapping the polygons. Then we're pulling the reports. We have to run the reports through some Python scripts. We have to run all that through SQL Server. Then we have to run it all through Monobuilder. That's always going to be one task, which is a land data update, right? Because there might be 4 or 5 individual discrete steps, but they're not. It might take a few hours of time across a couple people, but it's not meaningful enough in terms of the data or the work required of us to split it out individually. Thanks for the question. Anna?
How does the tickets get assigned to someone? Are you guys broken out in geographic areas, or do everybody just takes the next ticket?
Okay, yeah, that's a great question. So this is all for Cabot North actually. Cabot functions like 2 separate companies almost in terms of the mirror between North and South region and what is and isn't done. So the Cabot South region, our GIS counterparts there are not utilizing the ticket system, at least not at this time. Everything there, everything you're seeing is just for the North region. But in terms of how they get assigned, the caller or the person doing the requesting can assign it to someone if they want. They have that option, or they can just assign it to the department. If it gets assigned to the department, we all have it on our phones. There's an app, so it'll actually one popped up on my phone. If you saw me look down and hit it, it was because one popped up. I don't think the microphone picked up the chime, but so we all get it. We all see it. Everyone has a pretty good idea of what their area of responsibilities are. So people generally will pretty quickly claim tickets that they're responsible for, and if they don't, then usually a quick conversation, I can make sure that gets assigned to whoever's responsible for it if they're not sure. Yes, sir?
Have you had any difficulty getting people, like your users, to create tickets? And then, like, what's the solution to overcome that if that's happening?
We've had difficulties on both ends of that spectrum. So when it comes to getting users to create tickets, we're still having to create a lot of tickets for people, which is, ideally I want them to create their own tickets, but for my purposes, just getting the data logged and creating the tickets for them is right now achieving what we needed to achieve, which is getting these things logged and getting these things, even if we put it in because we think they requested X, Y, and Z, and they'll email us or respond ticket and say, no, what I really wanted was A, B, and C. That's fine. That can all be in the ticketing system. There's a record of all that, and that's not a problem. We are getting better, or our users are getting better with requesting things of us, and I anticipate that if we go a year in the future, most users will probably just be very used to requesting that. Conversely, the other half of that is people that we also have users that use the ticketing system as an ongoing conversation and just basically expect you're going to leave a ticket open forever, and when and if for an ongoing task, it'll be the same ticket constantly. So there's some education that we need to do for people. It's where having the same system for IS and GIS also comes to our benefit, because the same people that we may be having an issue with getting to use it, they are too. So they're not just hearing it from us. They're the same people that whenever they put in a request for a new keyboard or anything, someone in IS is going up and saying, hey, you got to put a ticket in, or hey, we got to close this ticket. It can't stay open for a month, and every time you have a question, you just respond to the same ticket. So, yes, sir.
Per user submitted ticket, I guess there's is it a web page interface, or can they submit it through email?
That's a great question. So they can email the ticketing system, and there's a web page user interface. So the way we see it is it's basically single sign-on to get into it and a bunch of other products. So I don't know, as an end user, Phil, do you keep it? Do you just have it up all day, or do you just hit it when you need it?
I log into Okta and
Okay.
go to service now.
Yeah. Thank you. So I keep it up all day. So for me, I just log in the morning and I keep it up all day. I generally prefer, I'll get them on my phone, but it'll also email us. So if the department gets a ticket, it'll email if our team gets a ticket, it'll email it to everyone in the ticket, or everyone in the team, unless it's been assigned to one specific person. So we'll see it both in the dashboard. If we have our phones up, it'll come up, pop up our phones, and we'll get an email about it. So we'll be aware. Yes.
I feel like a big portion of our jobs is actually building relationships.
Yep.
Which requires FaceTime and all that good stuff. So how do you balance that with
Sure.
create a ticket for that?
Right.
We see a lot of people that just stop giving us that feedback or data corrections or something like that because they don't want to deal with it.
I don't anticipate that we'll